Hi, I'm Jake Kurtz with MMA Futures, and alongside me, Bjorn Rebney. Tell me a little bit about Bellator, how it got started.
Wow, that's a long question for late at night. But I was just like most of us. I was an MMA fan, and I was the guy who would sit around with his friends and order the old pay-per-views years ago, when Chuck was fighting and Tito was fighting and everybody else was going early on, and Frank Shamrock, and I would buy the Pride fighting stuff that was coming over. I have VHSs in my garage from Pride and Jungle Fights in Brazil and stuff like that. But there was no U.S. There was no MMA industry in the United States. And then Pride took this chance on this fledgling organization that we all knew called the UFC in '05, and it took off ratings-wise. And I had been in the fight industry for 15 years as a professional working in boxing, and I had trained in jiu-jitsu, and I loved the sport. I saw an opportunity. So I shut down my other business, and I started building out a business plan. And I said, you know what, I'll do a tournament-based organization because that's something different, and it's a whole different twist on what the UFC is doing. And look at us, 5 years later, second biggest organization in the world. We got this relationship with Viacom. We're on Spike TV, 146 countries around the world, and got some of the greatest fighters in the world fighting here. So it knock on wood, it worked, which is great. But it was just a dream in my head.
And I see that you guys are having no problems signing big contracts. You got the, two-time Olympic champion?
Yeah, I mean, we've been really fortunate. The growth curve here, when I first got into this, I had to get investment capital to make it work. And I never BS the investors. Like, I wasn't one of those guys who walked in not knowing the industry, who said, oh, in a year and a half, we'll do huge pay-per-views. I said, this is going to take 5-6 years, and it's going to take a huge investment of capital. But if you stick with me and you believe in the business plan, we'll be successful, we'll make money, we'll form a huge partnership with a major cable network, as we've done with Spike, and it'll work. So now we've got the capital to go out and get major players in MMA and sign huge contracts with guys and build the evolution of this brand through the fighters, because that's exactly where it should be built. It should be built through the fighters. It shouldn't be about promoting the brand, which some other folks do. It should be about promoting the fighters, because they're what's going to take you to the next level. They're the guys who's going to build the brand. Nobody's tuning into a fight organization to watch me or the guy who heads the other organization. They're tuning in to watch great fights with amazingly talented guys, Michael Chandler, Eddie Alvarez, King Mo, Rampage. The list goes on and on. You saw some today, Patricky Pitbull, Marcin Held, those kind of guys. That's who they want to see, because I was there. I was one of them. I'm a fan. And I watched, it didn't matter whether I was watching Pride or the UFC or what it was. It was watching great fights. So, that's the cornerstone. You got to invest in the fighters.
And here at MMA Futures, we totally agree. We're all about even the amateurs, just our amateurs, starting in our amateurs, and guys making that transition. Now, I see as far as your recruitment, how are you finding yourself going back and kind of looking at people in the younger stages of their career because of how evolved the sport is getting?
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the transition elements we always look at is wrestling, because I think the smoothest transition that guys can make. I mean, judo players, Carl Amasu comes out, and he's an amazing judo player. Rick Hahn went to the Olympics in judo. Marcin Held comes out of a BJJ background, and the Pitbulls are kind of old school Brazilian fighters. But wrestling seems to give us the most smooth transition into MMA, and if wrestlers can end up learning how to strike, you've got the makings of a potential good mixed martial artist. So we always look at the amateur wrestling game. We always look at the NCAAs. We always look at the next Bubba Jenkins who's coming out, and those kind of guys, the Michael Chandlers, the Ben Askrens that we had previously. And we got a lot of guys coming at us. We got guys coming at us from Russia and then the Far East, the Middle East, South America, etc. And we look at a ton of tape. Some guys we take and have had 2 fights. Some guys we take that have had 17 fights. It's just about you find those diamonds in the rough and you build them.
Your first broadcast being in 2009. And with the UFC having the jump that they did on you,
20 years.
And you growing as fast as you have recently, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Are you going to be knocking on the UFC's door?
Well, I mean, look, the measuring sticks that we use to gauge success in MMA are cable ratings and pay-per-view buy rates. We're doing our first pay-per-view coming up May 17th. Cable ratings-wise right now, FS1 versus Spike, we're beating them on a consistent basis. Sometimes they beat us, sometimes we beat them, but with our +3s, we're beating the UFC in the cable game. So that's an incredible indicator for me as to the growth of this company. Nobody has ever, not the Elite XCs, the IFLs, the Bowdogs, the Afflictions, nobody ever got into that galaxy. That's the measuring tool. The UFC built the brand on the back of Spike TV and the amazing 100 million home exposure that Spike provided. That's our home now. The UFC's home with FS1. So that's a measuring stick for me in terms of where we're going as a brand and how quickly we're getting there. We've been around 5 years. They've been around 20 plus years. So I like our growth curve.
Absolutely, and I tell you what, we really appreciate your tournament style format because as old MMA fans, we know you fought tournament style, and that's how you got to the top. And we think we should have it even in NCAA football because that's how you know the best.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Bjorn.
Thanks, brother.
I'm Jake Kurtz with MMA Futures, Bjorn, president of Bellator, and we are the future of MMA.